All right. Next up, the chordates. So, anyone want to go over with me again the 4 defining features of chordates? Notochord, right? The cartilage at the top of the organism. What else? Dorsal nerves, right? Right below the notochord. What else? Pharyngeal gill slits. And what else? What's the final one? Post-anal tail. Yep, perfect. Good job, guys. All right. So let's look at the non-vertebrate chordates. So the ones that don't have true backbones. They come in 2 flavors. Number 1 are the amphioxy, the chordata, right here. They'll be on this display right here. They look a lot like our embryos, and our shared ancestor probably looked a lot like this before they turned into more advanced organisms. So you'll see they have just the bare minimum of what makes a vertebrate or a chordate a chordate. You'll have the gill slits, you'll have the postanal tail, you have the notochord, and you have the dorsal hollow nerve cord. Sorry, actually, the notochord is below the nerve cord. Sorry, it's my bad. But this is what our embryos look like when we're really young. Let's go back 1 slide. Right? Our embryos, as they develop, they look a lot like that, which shows our common shared ancestry. Next group are the sea squirts. I don't know if you can see them in the display. There's 2 of them, I think, and they're just these little dots that are sitting on top of these mussel shells. So they basically have become entirely sessile. Their entire purpose on planet Earth is to sit on the ground and filter water through their gills and eat stuff that gets filtered through that water. When they're young, they again have all that stuff that you're required to have as a chordate. But when they grow up, they fall to the ground and they become this thing. They don't have notochord anymore. They still have the gill slits. They lose their hollow nerve cord. Why would you still keep the gill slits in this adult organism that looks kind of like a sponge? So water comes in through here and water goes out through here. Why do you still need the gill slits? To filter water, right? To get water through their gills, oxygenate it, and then eat the food that's on top of their gills, right? So all those things, these little features that like differentiate different groups, try to tie every morphological feature to a biological purpose. That'll really help you figure out and kind of have a scaffold to know what to study, to what to memorize. You don't have to just memorize it raw, right? Okay, so next we're going to go into the biggest group of the chordates, the subphyla vertebrata. And so these are us. Everything with a true backbone, kind of, sort of, in quotes, is a true vertebrate. So you have 3 body layers: bilateral symmetry, complete gut, cranium, jaws, lungs and gills, well-developed brain, paired kidneys. We've already talked about all these things. Postanal tail. Now, the spinal cord is surrounded by a vertebrae, or a collection of vertebrae. So how this works, remember we have this notochord, right? Notochord is cartilage spanning the length of your back. As you develop into a vertebrate, during the development of the embryo, the mesoderm makes skeletal features, actual bone. And that bone will insert itself to become a spinal cord, and every like disc between each part of that spinal cord is now what's remaining in the notochord. That spinal cord grows around that dorsal nerve cord and protects it. That is the purpose of the spine is multifaceted, but one of the reasons it's more strong, or stronger than the notochord, right? So it gives structure, but it's stronger than the notochord, and it's skeletal, so you can have more muscle attachment on that. So it just becomes overall stronger, but it also grows around the spinal cord, so it protects all those nerves in the spine using bone covering, right? That makes sense? Just one person, please, on. All right, we got 3 nods. Perfect. All right, 2 to 4 chambered ventral heart, a much more efficient heart than these other organisms. That's all you really need to know about that. Okay, so let's start off in each group. Now we have the fishes, the actinopterygii, right? Actinopterygii. What's important about this? Just know how they look, I guess. What's important? They're vertebral column. So like our spines look like this. You can't really see a whole. So the ridge on the back where the spines point out of the spine are very, very small. But the fish have these big ass spines that go up and down, like really big, right? What does that allow the fish to do? What is one of the purposes of having bone besides just being structurally sound? Muscle attachment, yeah. Having bone allows you to have a solid surface to attach your muscles to scaffold your muscles to. And when fish look like that, it means they have a shit ton of like surface area to attach muscles to. That's why fish are so muscular. If you cut them open, there's just 2 big fillets, just muscle everywhere, right? And they need that to propel their bodies in a fusiform way in a serpentine way through the water. It's very, very viscous. Yep. Okay. Most of them have jaws. And a jaw, remember, it actually comes from the pharyngeal gill slits. I don't think the actual gills come from the pharyngeal gill slits, which is interesting. The actual developmental pattern is the jaw comes from the pharyngeal gill slit, and from the fish onwards, every vertebrate has jaws. And there's a clear benefit to having jaws, right? Number 1, it'll help you capture prey better, but number 2, it'll help you chew your food, and that just further digest your food before you have to throw that into your stomach. It'll increase the nutrition you get throughout your life, right? Just more efficient. All this is getting to a more efficient, more complex organism. Fusiform body shape, like a rocket, just flows through the water very aerodynamically. You got fins, right? And you got gills. Easy peasy. Again, you won't have to know. For these guys, you could do. There's a whole like class on this, I think, in the winter. We won't go into that kind of detail. You just need to know some very, very basic stuff about each class. Okay, so amphibians, the fish are swimming around in the ocean. The amphibians are that first group that try to go from ocean to land. They're bridging that gap. Some of the things that allow them to do that are limbs. They have true most of them that are on land have true lungs. A lot of the babies still have gills. All the babies still have gills, or most of the babies still have gills. And a lot of them can actually breathe through their skin, or they actually have to supplement their oxygen with breathing through their skin. So all this combined means they still need to be near water. They still need to be moist all the time. They can vocalize. A lot of them can vocalize, and they have true eyelids that help protect their eyes from external environment. Another thing, a little small fact, the frog locomotion is called sartorial motion. It's where you jump around, right? Kangaroos also have sartorial motion. The reptiles, they go even further towards, they're that next final transition from water to water/land to true land, right? These guys are well developed to live on land. They have scales, which protect them from the environment outside. They protect them from losing water, so they don't need to have that moist skin that amphibians have. They have an amniotic egg, which means an egg with a shell and specialized features that allow the egg, again, to survive in a very arid environment. Prevents water from being lost from the egg. Whereas if you look at amphibian eggs, they kind of look like boba, just kind of floating around, really like mushy and shit. They need to be around water. These guys don't. And they fuse a lot of these bones together to make stronger skeletal structures to allow them to do better on land. And the way their bodies are positioned, if you actually look at them, their limbs are a little bit more splayed inwards. Those limbs are better able to resist gravity. Whereas most of these amphibians are not too good at walking around on land, so they kind of scrape away on their bellies. their limbs are a little more inwards to allow them to counteract that. Okay. Birds, now they're going from water to waterland to land, now to the air, right? Birds are dinosaurs. They're actually within the class Reptilia, technically speaking. What about them? They have feathers, clearly adapted for flight. They have fusions of the bones in the spine, become strong for flight. They have a keeled sternum. So this, like we talked about earlier, muscle attachment is very important. So when you have this big ass piece of muscle or bone right here, it means you need a lot of muscle to be attached to that. That's used for flying, right? So when you look at a chicken breast, for example, even though they're not amazing flyers, like that's the same kind of feature. When you cut down the middle, that sternum that all that chicken breast is attached to, that's in the ancestors of the chicken, used for very strong flying. And that's the majority of their weight comes from those, the flying muscles. To reduce weight to fly, they have bones that are very brittle, or not very brittle, they're very crosshatched, they're very, they have a lot of air pockets in them, right? So they're pneumatic. That means they don't have teeth. You know, you lose teeth, you don't need teeth for flying around. They have a couple of organs that will shrink and grow during the season, like during breeding season, for example. The testes will grow when they're usually shriveled up. And the ovaries one of them will pop out versus both of them. They all start out shriveled during the regular season. When they need to breed, one pops out. And it all goes back to their ability to reduce their body weight normally to make flight easier. And they have a very well-developed brain. Mammals. Mammals are, let's see. So the birds and the mammals are both warm-blooded, which means their body is adapted to maintain temperature always. It has the same temperature all the time unless they're super sick, or they're hybrid, like very specific instances. But at a resting, normal metabolic level, their body is the same temperature, which allows all their enzymes and all their internal body mechanics to be adapted for a specific temperature. They don't have to deal with any of that BS, which means they can be more efficient, but they also require a lot of food to maintain that temperature. Important things to note: they have fur. Most of them have fur, rather. They have mammary glands, which produce milk to nurse their young. Their young are developed internally, and that you give birth to live young, right? And they have specialized teeth. So specialized teeth, very important. In most of these mammals, you have different sets of teeth for different sets of purposes. It really allows you to diversify your feeding ability. And you have very complex behavior because of your giant brains. Okay, so now we'll go on to two groups of mammals that are important. We have the carnivora, which is basically most things that are mammals that eat exclusively or a lot of meat are carnivores. They have very, very big brains for very complex behavior. They're encased in a very, very heavy skull to adapt to, like, for chomping down on stuff, right? The zygomatic arch, which is part of the jaw in the ear area, which develops from the pharyngeal gill slits, those are huge. So you have a huge jaw, which means you bite down really, really strong, right? The teeth can be sharp. Well, they're usually sharp. And they have very different kinds of sharp teeth. Some for puncturing, some for slicing, some for grinding. Just again, so you can diversify your portfolio for killing and chewing and eating your prey. All right, next we're going to move on to the primates. These are us. We have a hugely developed brain, very strong shoulders. Like if you look at a cat, this area of the cat is really, really small. We have huge shoulders for swinging around trees and moving our hands around like very broadly, just having a lot of upper body mobility and strength. We also have thumbs, which is like a very underrated feature. You can move shit around, you can write stuff, you can pick up ants, I don't know. And then as you get further and further along towards us, they start getting bipedal locomotion, which is very efficient. And those are the vertebrates. And chordates will give you 5 minutes to look around at the different groups. So just a couple of skeletons here and there. You'll have the amphioxi over here. You'll have the sea squirts in the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4. These at the bottom level, these are all sea squirts. And then we'll go over the answers and we'll move on to the review.